I decided to call a call girl secretly from my girlfriend, but I was shocked. When I saw my girlfriend at the door, relationships, they say, can be a roller coaster of emotions. I guess I never truly understood that until my girlfriend and I hit the infamous plateau. We'd been together for almost 3 years, and things had started to feel routine. The spark that once ignited our passion had dimmed, replaced by a comfortable but somewhat stifling familiarity. At first, I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. We were busy with work, caught up in the daily grind. But as weeks turned into months, a nagging sense of boredom began to settle in. We had our usual date nights, our predictable conversations, our habitual routines. It was all so safe, so boring. I found myself yearning for something more, something to break the monotony. That's when temptation started whispering in my ear. The idea of calling a call girl wasn't something that sprang up overnight. It was a gradual, insidious thought that took root and grew, fed by my restlessness and dissatisfaction. I'd heard stories from friends, seen ads pop up online. It seemed so easy, so discreet. Just one night of excitement, a chance to feel that rush again without the strings attached. I rationalized it over and over in my mind, convincing myself that it wouldn't mean anything. It was just a way to spice things up, to feel alive again. The first time I seriously considered it was after a particularly uneventful night out. We'd gone to our favorite restaurant, shared the same old conversations, and returned home to our separate corners of the couch. As she scrolled through her phone, I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy for the life we used to have, the late-night adventures, the spontaneous trips, the wild, uninhibited passion. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. I grabbed my phone and started browsing through online ads, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The idea of meeting a stranger, of indulging in a secret night of passion, was intoxicating. Days passed, and the thought consumed me. I tried to push it aside, to focus on my work, my hobbies, anything to distract myself. But it was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. I started to distance myself from my girlfriend, feeling guilty and confused. She noticed, of course, but I brushed off her concerns with vague reassurances. Then one Friday night she told me she was going out with her friends. It was the perfect opportunity, and the temptation was too strong to resist. I decided to go through with it. After she left, I paced the living room, my nerves on edge. I finally picked up my phone and dialed the number from one of the ads I'd saved. A smooth, professional voice answered, and I found myself making arrangements almost on autopilot. The details were quickly settled, an hour from now, at my place. As I hung up, a wave of anxiety washed over me. This was really happening. I took a quick shower, trying to steady my nerves. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one stretching into an eternity. I checked the time compulsively, my anticipation mixed with a growing sense of guilt. Was this really what I wanted? Was I ready to cross this line? Before I could second-guess myself any further, there was a knock on the door. My heart leapt into my throat. I took a deep breath and walked to the door, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for the handle. This was it. No turning back now. I opened the door, expecting to see the call girl I had arranged to meet, but instead, standing there, her expression a mix of shock and hurt, was my girlfriend. "Hey," she said, her voice trembling. "What's going on here?" My mind went blank, panic flooding my system. I thought you were out with your friends," I stammered, my heart racing. "I was," she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "But I forgot my wallet, so I came back to get it. And then I saw your text messages on the screen." I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't thought to hide my phone, to delete the evidence. The realization hit me like a freight train. She knew. She knew everything. She held up my phone, her eyes brimming with tears. "Who is she?" she demanded. "And why the hell were you calling her?" I stood there, speechless, my mind racing to come up with an explanation, an excuse, anything to make this situation less catastrophic. But there was no hiding it, no denying what I'd done. "I'm sorry." I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. I was bored. I was feeling neglected. It was a stupid, terrible mistake. Her expression hardened, a mix of betrayal and fury. Neglected? So your solution was to call a call girl? To cheat on me? I couldn't meet her eyes, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I never meant for you to find out like this. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Well, you've certainly succeeded in hurting me. I don't even know who you are anymore. The silence between us was suffocating, the reality of what I'd done sinking in. I had betrayed her trust, shattered the foundation of our relationship. There was no easy fix, no simple apology that could make this right. I'm sorry, I repeated, feeling the inadequacy of the words. I don't know what else to say. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and disappointment. I need some time, she finally said, her voice breaking. I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again. With that, she turned and walked out the door, leaving me alone with my guilt and regret. I sank to the floor, my mind racing with the consequences of my actions. I had wanted excitement, a break from the monotony, but all I had found was heartbreak and the potential end of everything I held dear. As I sat there in the empty apartment, I realized that I had a long road ahead of me, one filled with difficult conversations, heartfelt apologies, and the hope that somehow we could find a way back to each other. But for now, all I could do was face the stark reality of my betrayal and the uncertain future it had created. The days that followed were some of the longest and most excruciating of my life. My girlfriend, ex-girlfriend maybe, didn't return home that night or the next. Her absence was a glaring void, a constant reminder of my mistake. The apartment, once filled with the warmth of our shared moments, now felt like a cold, empty shell. I tried calling her, texting her, anything to reach out and explain, but every attempt was met with silence. The waiting was agonizing, the uncertainty gnawing at me. I replayed our last conversation over and over in my mind, wishing I could take back every word, every action that had led us to this point. 3 days later, she finally called. My heart leapt when I saw her name on the screen, but her tone was icy, devoid of the warmth I had come to rely on. We need to talk, she said. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street, in an hour. I agreed, my mind racing with what I would say, how I could possibly make amends. The coffee shop was a neutral territory, a place where we had shared countless casual conversations. Now it would be the stage for one of the most important discussions of our relationship. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked tired, but there was a determination in her gaze that made my heart sink. I took a deep breath and walked over, my steps heavy with apprehension. "Hey," I said softly, taking the seat across from her. She looked at me, her expression guarded. "Hey." We sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the bustling cafe a stark contrast to the tension between us. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you feel the need to call someone else?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I don't know where to start. I was feeling bored, unfulfilled. I know that's no excuse, but I let my stupid desires get the better of me. She shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "So, instead of talking to me, you decided to betray me?" "I know I should have talked to you," I said, my voice cracking. "I made a terrible mistake. I thought it was just a way to break the monotony, to feel something different. I never wanted to hurt you." She took a deep breath, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "You don't get it, do you? It's not just about the act. It's about trust. You destroyed the trust we had." Her words cut deep, and I felt a surge of guilt and regret. "I know I did. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right." She looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I don't know if you can. I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were." The weight of her words hung heavy between us. I wanted to reach out, to hold her hand and promise that we could fix this, but I knew it wasn't that simple. "Please, give me a chance," I pleaded. "I love you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." She sighed, looking down at her coffee. "I need time. Time to think, to figure out if I can ever forgive you. This isn't something I can just get over." I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll give you all the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'm committed to making things right." We sat in silence for a while, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. Finally, she stood up, her movements slow and deliberate. "I have to go," she said softly. "I'll reach out when I'm ready." I watched her walk away, my heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and hope. She needed space, and I had to respect that. As I left the cafe, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long journey toward redemption. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for our relationship, to prove that I could be the partner she deserved. The following weeks were a blur of self-reflection and soul-searching. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind occupied, but the emptiness at home was a constant reminder of what I had lost. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to understand the underlying issues that had driven me to make such a reckless decision. Each session was a step toward understanding myself better. I learned to confront my fears of stagnation and boredom, to recognize the destructive patterns that had led me down this path. It was a painful process, but it was necessary if I wanted to become a better person, someone worthy of her trust. During this time, I heard nothing from her. The silence was deafening, but I respected her need for space. I hoped that she was also taking the time to heal, to process everything that had happened. Then, one evening, as I sat alone in the living room, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from her. My heart raced as I opened it, my hands trembling. "Can we meet tomorrow? I think I'm ready to talk." I replied immediately, agreeing to meet at the same coffee shop. That night I barely slept, my mind filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. This conversation would be crucial, a chance to rebuild or a final goodbye. The next day I arrived early, my nerves on edge. She walked in a few minutes later, her expression calm but serious. We exchanged a brief, awkward hug before sitting down. "I've had a lot of time to think," she began, her voice steady. "About us, about what happened." "And?" I asked, my heart pounding. She took a deep breath. "I'm willing to give us another chance, but things have to change. We need to communicate better, to be more honest with each other, and I need to see that you're truly committed to rebuilding my trust." Relief and gratitude flooded through me. "I promise I'll do whatever it takes. I'm so sorry for what I did. I love you, and I'm willing to put in the work." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I love you too, but this is going to be a long road. We need to take it one step at a time." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "One step at a time," I agreed. As we sat there, a sense of hope began to blossom. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and setbacks, but we were willing to face it together. And that, I realized, was the most important step of all. With the tentative agreement to rebuild our relationship, we embarked on a journey that felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep could send us tumbling into the abyss, but we were determined to navigate it together. We started seeing a couples therapist, Dr. Thompson, who came highly recommended for her no-nonsense approach and expertise in relationship repair. Our first session with Dr. Thompson was intense. She listened as we recounted the events that led us there, her sharp eyes flicking between us as we spoke. "You've both been through a lot," she said finally. "But if you're committed to this process, there's hope. We need to establish some ground rules and set clear expectations." We nodded, eager to get started. "First," she continued, "you both need to be completely honest with each other. No more secrets." Transparency is crucial if you're going to rebuild trust. I agreed immediately, glancing at my girlfriend to see her nodding as well. Second, you need to work on your communication. That means talking about your feelings, your fears, and your needs. It won't be easy, but it's necessary. We spent the next hour discussing the specifics of our situation, with Dr. Thompson guiding us through the process. She assigned us exercises to complete before our next session, designed to help us open up and reconnect. That evening, as we sat on the couch, my girlfriend turned to me with a serious expression. "There's something else we need to talk about," she said. "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship, and I realize that there are some things I need from you if this is going to work." I nodded, feeling a pang of anxiety. "Of course. What do you need?" She took a deep breath. "I need to know that you're committed to this, really committed. That means no more hiding, no more secrets. And I need you to be honest with me about everything, even if it's difficult." "I promise," I said, my voice steady. "No more secrets. I'll be completely honest with you from now on." She looked relieved, but still cautious. "I also need you to understand how deeply you hurt me. It's not just about what you did, but the fact that you felt the need to do it in the first place. We need to address the underlying issues in our relationship if we're going to move forward." "I understand," I said, feeling a surge of guilt and determination. "I know I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." We spent the rest of the evening talking about our needs and expectations, laying everything out on the table. It was a difficult conversation, filled with raw emotions and painful truths, but it was also a crucial step in our healing process. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of therapy sessions, communication exercises, and heartfelt conversations. We learned to express our feelings openly, to listen to each other without judgment, and to address the root causes of our issues. It wasn't easy. There were plenty of arguments and setbacks, but we kept pushing forward, determined to rebuild what we had lost. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, my girlfriend sat me down in the living room. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I felt a knot of anxiety form in my stomach. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, looking me straight in the eyes. "I've been seeing someone too. Not romantically, but I've been talking to a friend about our relationship. He's been giving me advice, helping me sort through my feelings." I felt a surge of mixed emotions: jealousy, relief, curiosity. "Who is he?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just a friend from work," she said quickly. "Nothing more. But I wanted to be honest with you because I know how important trust is right now." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. "Thank you for telling me. I appreciate your honesty." She looked relieved, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I wanted to be open with you." "I understand," I said, reaching out to take her hand. "We both need to be honest if we're going to make this work." That night, as we lay in bed, I thought about the journey we were on. It was a long and difficult road, filled with obstacles and challenges, but we were navigating it together. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to work on our relationship. We celebrated small victories, like our first date night without any tension and our first heartfelt laugh in what felt like ages. Each step forward was a testament to our commitment and determination to rebuild our bond. But there were still moments of doubt, times when the past threatened to overshadow our progress. One night, after a particularly difficult therapy session, my girlfriend turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that we'll never fully get past this, that the trust we once had is gone forever." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. "I'm scared too," I confessed. "But I believe in us. We've come so far and we're stronger because of it. We just have to keep moving forward, one step at a time." She nodded, sniffling softly. "I know. I just need to hear that sometimes." As we held each other, I felt a renewed sense of determination, Our journey was far from over, but we were facing it together, armed with honesty, commitment, and a deep love that had weathered the storm. We still had a lot of work to do, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right path. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was a road we were willing to travel together. And that, I realized, was the most important step of all. Despite our progress in therapy, the atmosphere at home remained tense. Our conversations were strained, punctuated by long, uncomfortable silences. It was as if we were both afraid to say the wrong thing, to trigger another argument, or reopen old wounds. The silent treatment became our way of coping with the unresolved tension, but it only widened the gap between us. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. She barely acknowledged me as I walked in, her silence speaking volumes. I sighed, feeling the weight of the distance between us. "Hey," I said softly, hoping to break through the wall of silence. "How was your day?" She shrugged, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Fine." I sat down next to her, trying to bridge the gap. "Anything interesting happen?" She shook her head, still not looking at me. "No." The one-word answers stung, but I didn't know how to break the cycle we had fallen into. "I missed you," I said, reaching out to touch her hand. She pulled away, the rejection like a physical blow. "I'm tired," she said, standing up. "I'm going to bed." I watched her walk away, the silence in the room feeling more oppressive than ever. I knew we needed to talk, to address the growing distance between us, but every attempt seemed to push her further away. I felt helpless, trapped in a cycle of silence and misunderstanding. The next morning I woke up early, determined to break the ice. I made breakfast, hoping a small gesture would show her that I was still committed to us. She came downstairs, her expression guarded as she saw the table set with her favorite foods. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I made breakfast." She nodded, sitting down without a word. We ate in silence, the clinking of silverware the only sound between us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "This silence is killing me." She looked up, her eyes filled with sadness. "I know," she admitted, "but I don't know what to say. Every time we try to talk, it just ends in an argument." "We can't keep avoiding each other," I said, reaching out to take her hand. "We need to face this, together." She sighed, looking down at our intertwined fingers. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared that we'll never get back to what we had." I squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of determination. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I believe in us. We've come this far, and I'm not ready to give up. We just need to keep trying, one step at a time." She nodded, a small spark of hope in her eyes. "Okay, but we need to be patient with each other. This isn't going to be easy." "I know," I said softly. "But I'm willing to put in the work. I love you, and I want us to be okay again." That evening we had another session with Dr. Thompson. She noticed the shift in our dynamic immediately. "There's been a lot of silence between you," she observed. "What's going on?" We both hesitated, unsure of how to articulate the underlying tension. Finally, my girlfriend spoke up. "We've been struggling to communicate," she admitted. "Every conversation feels like a minefield, and it's easier to just stay silent." Dr. Thompson nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Silence can be a way of protecting ourselves from more pain, but it also prevents healing. You need to find a way to express your feelings without fear of judgment or rejection." We spent the rest of the session working on communication strategies, learning how to articulate our thoughts and emotions more effectively. It was a difficult process, but it felt like a step in the right direction. Over the next few weeks, we made a conscious effort to break the cycle of silence. We scheduled regular check-ins, times when we would sit down and talk about our day, our feelings, and our progress. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of tension and misunderstandings, but we were learning to navigate them together. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me with a hesitant smile. "I've missed this," she said softly. "Just being able to sit and talk without all the pressure." "Me too," I replied, feeling a warmth in my chest that had been absent for so long. "I know it's been hard, but I'm proud of how far we've come." She nodded, her smile growing. "We still have a long way to go, but I feel like we're finally on the right path." As the days turned into weeks, the silence between us began to lift. We found new ways to connect, rediscovering the things that had brought us together in the first place. We went on dates, took up new hobbies, and made time for each other amidst our busy schedules. It was a slow, gradual process, but each step forward felt like a victory. One night, as we lay in bed, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember when we first started dating? How we used to stay up all night talking about everything and nothing?" I smiled, the memory bringing a rush of nostalgia. "Of course. Those were some of the best nights of my life." She nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of love and determination. "I want us to get back to that. To being able to talk about anything and everything without fear or judgment." "We will," I promised, feeling a surge of hope. "We're getting there, one step at a time." As we drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. The journey was far from over, but we were facing it together, armed with the tools and determination to make it through. The silence that had once threatened to tear us apart was slowly being replaced with understanding, compassion, and a renewed sense of connection. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were walking it hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges came our way. And that, I realized, was the most important step of all. Despite our progress in therapy and efforts to communicate, the tension between us remained. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, a dark thought began to take root. The hurt and betrayal I felt hadn't dissipated, and I couldn't shake the desire to make her feel the same pain I had endured. It was a quiet, rainy night when the idea struck me. I had been scrolling through old photos on my phone, reminiscing about happier times, when my eyes landed on a picture of her brand-new car. She had been so proud of it, flaunting it like a trophy. The car was her baby, and the thought of damaging something she cherished brought a twisted sense of satisfaction. The next evening, after another strained conversation, she announced she was heading out to meet a friend for coffee. As soon as she left, I grabbed a baseball bat from the garage and headed towards her beloved car, parked just outside our apartment. The rain had turned into a light drizzle, the streetlights casting eerie reflections on the wet pavement. I approached the car, my heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and guilt. This wasn't who I wanted to be, but the urge for revenge was overpowering. With a deep breath, I swung the bat, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the night. The windshield cracked, splintering into a web of jagged lines. I swung again, the bat connecting with a satisfying crunch. Each hit was a release of the pent-up frustration and hurt that had been building inside me. When I was done, I stepped back, my breath coming in heavy gasps. The windshield was a mess of broken glass, a physical manifestation of the chaos in our relationship. I knew this act wouldn't fix anything, but in that moment it felt like a small victory. I returned to the apartment, the bat still in my hand, and waited. The rain continued to fall, a steady rhythm against the windows. When she finally came home, her scream pierced the quiet night. "What the hell happened?" she shouted, running into the apartment. I feigned ignorance, my heart pounding. "I don't know. Maybe some kids messing around." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in her gaze. "Did you do this?" I shook my head, maintaining my calm. "Why would I do something like that?" She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back outside to assess the damage. As she called the insurance company to report the vandalism, I felt a mix of satisfaction and regret. I'd gotten my revenge. But at what cost? The rift between us had only grown wider. That night, as we sat in silence, The weight of my actions settled heavily on my shoulders. I realized that my act of revenge hadn't brought me any closer to healing. It had only deepened the wound. If we were going to move forward, we needed to find a way to truly forgive each other. But for now, forgiveness felt like a distant dream, as shattered as the windshield of her brand-new car. The morning after I shattered the windshield, the weight of my actions pressed down on me. She had barely spoken to me since discovering the damage, and the silence between us was colder than ever. Her suspicion lingered, but without proof, she was left in a state of painful uncertainty. Our therapy session that week was strained. Dr. Thompson sensed the tension immediately. "Something's shifted between you two," she said, her keen eyes assessing us. "What happened?" My girlfriend sighed, her voice shaky. "Someone vandalized my car. The windshield was smashed. I don't know who did it, but it feels like another betrayal." Dr. Thompson looked at me, her gaze piercing. "Do you know anything about this?" I hesitated, guilt gnawing at me. "No, I don't, but I understand why she's upset." The lie sat heavy on my tongue, and the guilt grew with each passing day. We tried to continue our exercises, but the atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension. The nights were the hardest, lying next to each other with a gulf of distrust and unspoken words between us. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't keep living like this," she said, her voice breaking. "The suspicion, the silence, it's tearing me apart. Did you do it?" The truth hung in the air between us, and I knew I couldn't keep lying. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Yes," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I did it. I was angry, hurt, and I wanted to get back at you. I'm so sorry." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why? Why would you do that?" "I wanted you to feel the pain I felt," I confessed, my own tears starting to fall. "But it was wrong, and I regret it deeply. I've only made things worse." She looked away, her body shaking with sobs. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice filled with anguish. "I understand," I said softly, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you, and I'm sorry for everything." The days that followed were a blur of intense emotions. We continued therapy, but the sessions were more charged than ever. Dr. Thompson guided us through the fallout, helping us navigate the raw wounds and deep-seated issues that had brought us to this point. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. There were moments of connection, glimmers of hope amidst the hurt. One night, as we sat on the porch, she turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again," she said, "but I'm willing to try. I'll do whatever it takes," I promised. "I'll prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve." The road to healing was long and fraught with challenges, but we were committed to facing it together. The act of revenge had deepened the rift, but it also forced us to confront the depths of our pain and the strength of our love. And slowly, step by step, we began to find our way back to each other. The revelation of my vandalism had rocked our already fragile relationship, but strangely it also marked a turning point. We had hit rock bottom, and the only way left was up. The days that followed were filled with difficult conversations, tears, and moments of raw honesty. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, we found ourselves sitting quietly on the porch watching the sunset. My girlfriend broke the silence, her voice soft but steady. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, "about us and about what I need to move forward." I turned to her feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. "What do you need?" She took a deep breath. "I need to see that you're committed to changing, that this isn't just about fixing things temporarily, but about building a better future together. I need actions, not just words." "I understand," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I want us to have a future together, a real one." In the following weeks, I made a conscious effort to show her my commitment. I enrolled in anger management classes, something Dr. Thompson had suggested to help me deal with my frustrations in a healthier way. I also started journaling, documenting my thoughts and emotions as a way to process my guilt and learn from my mistakes. We began to set aside time each week for relationship check-ins, where we would talk openly about our progress, our setbacks, and our feelings. These sessions were tough, often bringing up painful memories and unresolved issues, but they also brought us closer. We were learning to communicate better, to listen without judgment, and to support each other's healing. One weekend, we decided to go on a small getaway to a nearby cabin, a chance to reconnect away from the stress of daily life. It was a gamble, but we both felt it was necessary. The cabin, nestled in the woods, provided the perfect setting for reflection and renewal. On the second night, as we sat by the fireplace, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember our first trip together?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "We were so young and carefree." I nodded, smiling at the memory. "Of course. We got lost on the hike and ended up camping under the stars." She laughed softly, the sound bringing warmth to my heart. I miss those days, the simplicity and the joy we found in each other. "We can find that again," I said, taking her hand. "It won't be the same, but it can be even better. We've grown, and we know what we want now." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and cautious optimism. "I believe we can too, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us." "I'm ready," I assured her. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like we're really on the right path." As the weekend came to an end, we returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still long and challenging, but for the first time, we both felt a glimmer of true hope. We had faced our darkest moments, and we were starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Our journey wasn't over, but we were walking it together, stronger and more committed than ever before. The turning point had come, and with it, a chance to rebuild not just our relationship, but a better, more honest version of ourselves.